Hi, I'm Mimi Chan. Welcome to Culture Chat. Thanks for joining the conversation. Greg, Rucka, and I are back. I was excited to catch up with Greg since he's been diligently writing in a bunker for 2 months. As many of you know, it's been a rough week for me. I've been speaking out about the rise of anti-Asian hate crimes on the news and at vigils honoring the victims of the mass shooting in Atlanta. It is always comforting to have conversations with Greg since we podcasted almost weekly since the start of the pandemic. It wouldn't be an episode of the Mimi and Greg show if we didn't discuss current events. Greg shared his outrage with mass shootings, hope for the vaccine, and the problems with social media. Talking to Greg after a couple of months off was comforting and a lot of fun. It's just what I needed after a rough week. For those that don't already know, Greg Rucka is a New York Times best-selling author of hundreds of comics and nearly 24 novels. He is also the writer for his Nebula-nominated film, The Old Guard, starring Charlize Theron. I'm loving these conversations and hope you are too. If you are, please rate my podcast on your platform of choice and share it with others. If you would like to support with a donation to help keep this podcast going, you can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com. For comments or suggestions, email me at mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Greg.
Hi, Mimi. How you been?
Oh my goodness. It's so funny because I looked at the calendar and I was like, oh, it's been 2 months since I've spoken to Greg. And there's
only been 2?
Exactly.
It feels longer, actually. It feels substantially longer.
That's where I was headed. I haven't spoken to a lot of people in over 2 months, but for some reason with you, because it was we had 50 weeks together or whatever. It felt much longer. So I was like, wow, it was only 2 months, but significantly longer. Well, you were missed, of course.
Oh, well, no, it was I'm afraid, a necessary hiatus.
Oh, yes.
But certainly not personal. So,
and I do not take it
for anybody who was emailing and going, oh my God, what happened? Nothing.
Greg got really mad at me.
That's right. You can't see the video. And she was wearing her Forever Carlisle shirt wrong.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was it.
I may show this one, so I am in my Forever.
I have standards. So, there you go.
I didn't have the sword on right. It was like a whole thing. There's standards and expectations as a big fan here. So
we have levels that we have to attain. So.
Right. Well, I am wearing my Forever Carlisle shirt to get as your Discord communities calls the Ruckaverse. So kind of I'm going to feel get my, get into the Greg mode now. I'm talking to Greg again.
I always cringe a little bit at that term at Ruckaverse. And the reason why, and I know because I it's not, the term in and of itself is not in any way, I think, insulting or demeaning. Mm-hmm. I just, there is a hubris that comes with it, I think. And my first exposure to something being called a XXX verse, a writer's verse, was when I got to DC and there was the Dixon verse, which encompassed everything that Chuck Dixon was writing. And I think unpacking it, which is something I have never really done. I just know that I sort of have a shudder, But I actually think the thing that that throws me about it, and I suppose it's less problematic when it's creator-owned collaborative work like Black Magic or Lazarus or The Old Guard, where it's Michael and myself, or Nick and myself, or Leo and myself. Are the gated community that those books are makes a certain amount of sense, right? It's, well, this didn't exist until we came along and built it,
right?
And the thing that throws me whenever I hear it in terms of the work for hire universe is that it's not true. Mm-hmm. It implies an ownership to something that cannot be owned, I guess.
Right. Yes.
right?
Yes.
I don't get to have a Rucka verse at DC Comics.
Right.
Nobody gets to have their own verse
Yeah.
because it's DC Comics. It's the same thing in Marvel, right?
Yeah.
You can sit there and be like, I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing this. And that's great. But, if Tom Brevoort says, well, Kelly Thompson's going to do this, then Kelly Thompson's doing that, right? And so it's not, I guess there's something inherently possessive slash ownership leaning in the verse suffix that that I suppose it is in my nature to say we should attempt to apply a little more precision.
Yes,
Maybe.
yes. But
But
this is termed by your
yeah,
fans, right? In your
yeah,
Discord and everything. It's not like you came out and you're like, "Welcome to my Ruckaverse."
yeah. I mean, I seem to recall that there were message boards that back in the day when message boards were hot and happening, that it was the the Burniverse and so on, and it's and even it's interesting. No, because now I'm thinking about things like Bendis calling his forum Jinx World,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
like
Yes.
and yeah, it's an interesting thing. I wonder what it says about our egos.
Well, you're always quite humble, and that's probably why you're having this whole
It's all an
thought process, and it's like going. But I liked saying, well, tune in for next week's Rucka rant, and you kind of took to that.
Yeah, well, but that's true because I do.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the only thing I'm consistently delivering on these days is, he's angry about something.
Yeah, and speaking of which, not that we want you to get angry, because
I thought you wanted to talk about art. Yeah.
It's so great to see you. But I mean, 2 months, there has been a lot of things happening in the last 2 months. Just earlier we were talking a little off air, of course, and it's like here in Florida, which is always a bit of a cluster and an embarrassment, but I'm pretty much almost vaccinated. And you were like, well,
which is really exciting.
Which is very exciting. Yeah.
I am hitting a point, and on the Discord, there will be people have been saying, I'm getting my vaccination. My first shot's tomorrow. I'm getting Moderna or whatever. And I'm starting to get jealous.
Yeah, that little FOMO, right? You're like, when is it my turn?
I am starting to get actively jealous and being like, I want my vaccination too. But where Jennifer and I are in Oregon, and the way Oregon is rolling it out, through the Oregon Health Services, we're not, at this point, we're not eligible until the beginning of May. And I don't have a problem with that. I mean, my impatience is simply, I would like to be vaccinated. Thank you. I would like to have this this little checkbox on my identity card that says you may engage in some things that are a little closer to normalcy as you remember it. But the flip side is, we're a large state in terms of land. We're a small state in terms of total population. So where we are on the national vaccine distribution chain, I don't know. But I absolutely and firmly believe that, 51-year-old, adult onset diabetic who's got it under control and no other health concerns should be shoving to the line in front of healthcare workers, teachers, first responders, last responders, and that's absurd. What's interesting to me is both of my kids are looking at higher education changes come the fall. Like Dashiell is going to college, and got a letter from NYU saying you have to be vaccinated to be in the dorms, which is like, oh yes, good. And then Elliot, who's looking to transfer from where they've been going to school in New York to a different school in New York, also got an email saying, to be eligible with housing, you're going to need to be vaccinated. And the thing I'm actually worried about most there isn't Dashiell. Dashiell will be eligible after her birthday at the end of May. She'll be fine.
Okay, so she'll be fine.
But Elliot is sort of in this limbo. Elliot is 21, so legally an adult. So not under our umbrella, and going to have to navigate this on their own, and is currently here, not in New York.
Right.
And I have this vague concern that somehow they'll miss out on being vaccinated, because of where they're moving at any given moment or whatnot. So
I think it's going to be okay. I mean, I know that you're in a place where there's not many vaccinations really and it's going really slow, but it was like 1 minute here, the 70-year-olds couldn't get appointments and it was crazy. And literally it was maybe a couple of weeks later, all of a sudden there was just
everybody
so much availability and there was all right, book. I mean, it was easy for us to book. It was not a problem. And then I had heard, anecdotally, like show up if there's extras, they're giving them out. And, and so they're finally, I think, getting that handle on that. And and we know the supply is good. I just listened to the Daily today and they were like, the supply has been there. It's because they don't know how to get it distributed to this many people this quickly. And of course not. We've never done like a worldwide vaccination before. Nope. It's the first time. So if you think about it, it's not so bad that 2 months in, they're really like, okay, we've got the handle on it now.
Oh, yeah, no,
it's not so bad, but
I don't really have any complaints at all with regards to that. And, my mother's 81 and the woman who has been responsible is my mother's 81 and has Parkinson's, I should add. And, I haven't seen her in almost a year. And she has been in isolation with her caregiver for almost a year now. And yesterday, Lydia sent photos of my mom with two of her friends playing Mahjong. And my mom used to play Mahjong every week. Okay. Like this was, our joke was, this was her chocolate and whiskey night. and it would the game would rotate around amongst these friends. And, these photos of my mom with like two of her friends who are in their 80s. And all of them without their masks. Around the table and the smiles. And all I could think was, I was genuinely so happy for her. To get that again.
Yes.
Because, she's fully vaccinated and she's outside that window now. And I've got a lot of friends in Australia, which has benefited from, being an island. So they like got
and they didn't let people in.
Yeah, you got it. They're like, oh, pandemic. No.
Yeah.
But there was I got basically a text from a friend of mine saying like, oh, the government announced singing and dancing will be allowed again as of like the 29th. It's like, that sense of like, oh well, yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
I see that. This is, this has been a long time. It for those of us who have taken it seriously, and the majority of us, I think, have. We all have these very different situations that we are living in. Some of us live alone. Some of us live with a partner or with immediate family. Some of us have roommates that we're not particularly close to, maybe, and we've been locked into this environment. And so, I totally, it makes sense that we're all sort of chomping at the bit, being like
yes.
At least it'll get a little better.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, because it's the end stretch, and I felt the same way. I'm like, I'm almost there. And I was getting very impatient. And my husband, of course, who's always patient, is like, just got to wait our turn. It's fine.
Yeah.
And, I'm like, because I want to be able to be around Tina a little more. And I mean, but I totally agree with you. I'm like, yes, healthcare needs to go get vaccinated on the frontline people. I'm like, I'm all about that. But interestingly, also on the Daily, the woman being interviewed, who's kind of working in this whole thing, is like, yeah, but you know what? If you can get down there and find a creative way to get it done, the more people that get it, the sooner, the better. She
Yeah.
even said, and it was like kind of the host was like, wow, I was actually surprised you just said that. And you're saying to just get in there and get it done. She's like, the more people that get it, the quicker, the better. And I'm with that too, because I'm talking to a doctor tomorrow who reached out to me. I think he's like one of the head doctors from the March of Dimes, and they were like, yeah, so apparently the Florida, for like a huge percentage doesn't want to get it. And so I want to have as much, discussions to bring awareness onto why this is an important thing. And
well, there you go. Trump legacy right there.
Yeah. Yes. But he got the vaccine.
Oh, no. And that's going to matter to the cult of his followers because they have ever once cared about what he does as opposed to what he says.
There it is.
I mean, this is your premise fails the moment you rely on logic, let alone common sense.
Yes, of course. I mean, it's There's no logic.
There is in the face of facts, pure denial. I mean, what's her name's defense in the defamation suit? Yesterday came out being like, no reasonable person would have believed our claims of election fraud. It's like, whoa, wait, what? That's not a defense. You can't go in front of an attorney and say, yeah, we lied, Your Honor. But we lied because it was so outlandish, nobody would believe it. It's like, really? Because you cost people billions of dollars, and lots of people, their lives are even now being threatened because of the things you said and did. You don't get to say we didn't mean it. We did it, but we knew we were lying. It's like, it's still criminal, sweetie. Shut up, sit down, and be prepared to be disbarred.
It's frustrating, as always.
Yeah, I mean, it's maddening. The flip side of that is we talk about there's a great story. It gets referred to frequently, and it's not an uncommon phenomenon. But I think it was best described as by Dashiell Hammett in The Maltese Falcon. He's got Spades talking about.
It's funny, I just saw that not long ago.
I don't believe it makes any of the versions of the movie.
Okay.
But Spade it talks about a case, a missing persons case, right? This guy who's living in, say, Cincinnati, just ups and disappears one day. And he's married, he's got a wife, he's got kids, he's got a good job. And they track the guy down, and he's living in like Seattle. And he's got a new name, and he has remarried, and he's basically made for himself again the exact life he had left. And the reason, the motive for doing this is that apparently he was on his way to work one day, and a construction girder fell in front of him, and a half second off and he'd have been dead.
Right. And
it sort of shocked him into, I have to change. Like, this is my life. I can't, it is so fragile. I have to get out there.
Yeah.
And yet he defaulted to his normal of before, which is one of the things I've always taken from that story, is that we do revert to a mean where we can. And you're seeing it to an extent with the vaccine, but you're seeing it more with the fact that, we have a new administration and they're doing things the way we're used to them doing them. And sort of as we sort of settle back down, we go back down to the mean level. Right.
Yeah.
There is a piece of me that really wishes we were seeing more coverage of what is being uncovered.
Yes.
From the last 4 years, and what has to be done to repair the damage, like on a small scale, literal, and some stuff you can't die. Like the CIA literally cannot have a press conference saying, well, since all of our agents are considered blown and all of our networks are now considered blown, we have to scrap everything and start all over. So open recruitment if you ever wanted to be a CIA agent. Send us your resume and so on. But man, if I was at the company right now, damn right. Mm-hmm. I would have just, okay, well, this is gone, this is gone, this is gone, this is gone. None of this is considered secure. And that's not only on the sort of national defense level, right? You got to ask the LaJoy is still Postmaster General. It's like, Jesus Christ, guys, why is this guy still here? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, this is not good. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's been very nice to wake up and not immediately cringe when I look at what the New York Times and the Guardian and the Washington Post have all told me is breaking news overnight. Now, the breaking news this past week has been horrible. The last 2 weeks.
But it wasn't incited by the president this time.
Oh, no, but it is. It absolutely was.
Well, what I meant was our president now.
Right.
I'm saying it wasn't like, oh, here we go. But you're right. He still just won't go away. Even if he's not the one out there right now.
Well, and just because the megaphone isn't that loud, isn't as loud as it used to be, doesn't mean the message isn't still getting out there and being just as virulent, And I mean, what happened in Atlanta is absolutely to be laid at his feet.
Oh yeah, I mean, I gave I've been doing news interviews like every day since like that happened. And it has been exhaustive and depleting and insane. And it's interesting because some channels will actually ask me, well, why do you think this is? And I will say, well, because 45. And, I said it like differently. I still wouldn't say his name though. I'm like former president. But I was like, yeah, well, he started off with, Kung Flu, China virus, and that enabled, just like the Black Lives Matter, just like George Floyd, it made people feel empowered to be racist and then act on that. And I, kind of went down that rabbit hole, and some news channels actually did play it. And then so oddly, my first Fox interview, of course, didn't play that, but my second one was live. And so, but I think that one was a little different because they wanted me to say all of that because they wanted me to get like 1 million thumbs down on, because it was their online digital platform. So they wanted like the controversial thing. So, I mean, I know I'm being staged, but I still feel like, man, if one person gets the message, then it's worth all the effort I'm doing. But it has been exhaustive. But you're right. This is all because of him. I mean, it's.
Yeah, no, this is the
plus the gun legislation and the, all like.
Why the hell do we not? I haven't looked, so actually, or I haven't tried to find it. Mm-hmm. But the mere fact that this judge overturned the assault weapon ban, and within a week,
in Colorado,
this happened. It's like, I hope this guy, is pilloried for it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
There is no more direct cause and effect.
Exactly.
And any attempt to say no, it's not. It's like, no. The intent might have been there before. The ability was not. Mm-hmm. And you empowered him. And it's absurd. It's just so. Yeah. Look, there will never be a shortage of things for us to be outraged about and hurt by.
Yeah.
And that's, that may simply be as it should be if we are going to be engaged citizens. Mm-hmm. Is that our engagement means we have to keep being informed and we have to keep being aware. And that means that for some of us, there is no way to separate. There's no way to build enough of an emotional wall that you don't that you don't respond emotionally. And I know people, and I have friends who can look at, politics and so on and sort of put the professional or
Compartmentalize.
they can compartmentalize the intellectual with the emotional very well. I'm not great at it. And it may simply be the nature of the kind of writer I am.
Mm-hmm.
But I they say all politics are local, all politics are emotional as well. You can be as rational as you want, but the fact of the matter is, as human beings, we have emotional responses that tend to override these. And this is why we tend to double down on stupid arguments. It's why it's so hard to get somebody's mind to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know. The
and
logical
I
side's
saw,
like, don't engage, but then you're like, but I want them to understand.
and if you don't engage, what other mechanism is there to educate?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, so it becomes the problem, as with so many things, is that there's no blanket solution here. You can't say you always need to do it. Like, I'm not going to get online and argue with trolls,
Right.
because their whole purpose and their avowed declared purpose is you will not be able to convince me. I'm just trying to egg you on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, then that's not what I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
But again, news alerts this morning, CEOs of Facebook, Twitter, and Google, once again, being grilled about social. And it's like, yeah, it would be great to see somebody do something about it, because what happened at the beginning of January is on them.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely on them, and is on Facebook most of all. Unquestionably so.
Yeah.
I listen to, as you know, I am a big soccer fan.
Yes, I knew that.
And I listen to a podcast that The Guardian does called Guardian Football Weekly, which is actually released 2 or 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they have been discussing fairly regularly, because it's been happening fairly regularly, is the amount of racist abuse players get online and on Twitter and so on and on Instagram. And, these are Black athletes who, God forbid they have a bad game or the team loses, get targeted. And the discussion that's come out, right, and as I gauge this, and this is in England, now it seems like Twitter and Facebook and so on are actually going to start policing accounts a little better, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna make it. They're going to shut that stuff down before it gets into the sphere. That seems to be where it's going, and they can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I have 20 episodes of you explaining exactly how, and
they've always been able to do that. And I guarantee you, today somebody is going to talk about it is not our place to. Zuckerberg's whole thing is, well, we don't censor, and it's like, yes, you do. Don't lie.
Right.
You absolutely do censor. And I guarantee you, if I started a Facebook page that got 5 million followers that said Facebook is the mouthpiece of Satan's asshole, right? And sign up to pledge to leave Facebook on this day at this time, and 5 million people, you're damn right they'd shut that page down in a heartbeat. So don't tell me it's about my freedom of speech.
We should try it.
It's just, this is just, hey, Mimi, we were off for 2 months. Greg's going to pick up right where he left off. It's the exact same thing always.
And that's the Rucka rant.
It's always about, look, you can do the thing that we know needs to be done. You can do the moral thing. You can do the ethical thing. It's the same thing about the climate crisis. The climate crisis is actually solvable. We could solve it. But the people who stand to make money off of the status quo won't, because they need to make more money. It's not a question of having made enough money, and I was pondering this yesterday. There is a sci-fi story that's going to be written about the climate change wars, the climate crisis wars, or however you want to call it, about the day that enough people said, no, this has to stop or else we're all going to die, and went with guns and tanks to those places that were like, no, we're not going to, and said, no, you're going to. And if we have to stop you from killing all of us at the end of a gun, we will. But it's a science fiction story. What we do know is that you can get the majority of people to vaccinate in a pandemic within months. If you think about it, I mean, just within months. So if we could do that, we absolutely could solve a lot of our climate problems in short order. And we need to do it in short order. We want these emissions reduced by 2050. It's like, that'll be 15 years too late, guys.
Yeah, and it just keeps getting worse. I mean,
yeah.
That's the problem, right? And so I do want to talk about your writing, but before we jump into that, because you're a writer, right? Well, one is
we got nominated for a Nebula Award for the Old Guard.
What I wanted to. Yeah, this is what I wanted to jump into. Yeah. It's like enjoy that. I said, Oscar, look at this. Of course, Greg is all like, well, I was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Oh no, we're gonna get to steal a line from a comedian who I've lost all respect for, but it was funny back in the day. We're gonna get pounded like a narc at a biker rally. I mean, just having seen The Mandalorian, if nothing else, I'm like, I'd vote for Filoni's episode in season 2 myself. So, but this is absolutely one of those. It is an honor just to be nominated. Moments.
Well deserved. And I mean, you're a writer, obviously, but also it's your first, major motion picture, like you doing the screenplay, so it's not like it's just another Greg's novel made this list, or another comic won the Eisner. Like, this is your the first one. So now you've set the bar real high, though.
Maybe.
So, I mean, I was so excited. I needed that too, because it's been such a dark week, and I've been pulled in so many directions, and I was so happy to see that, because I try to log in and catch up on things, because mostly people will talk about things going on with you and everything. And I was like, good news. I've got some good news. It's amazing. I needed that. I was so happy for you.
It's certainly not bad news. And it was surprising. And yeah, I mean, it's cool.
You're like, I'll take it.
Yeah, I certainly won't say no if we win.
Yeah.
I won't say I feel that I must decline that won't happen.
No.
But yeah, I mean, if you look at what we're up against, it's
but that also shows that you're up there in that league. So it's
either that or it shows that it was a pretty lean year.
No, I don't think so. Because everything there listed is pretty strong, like Lovecraft, and they're all really cool shows. Yeah. Like, it's not like those, sometimes you see those off years at the Oscar.
Yeah,
I guess. I was like, damn, I should have made a film this year.
Yeah. Which movie this year about the unrest in the 60s is going to win Best Picture?
Right. It's pretty intense. Yeah. I was like, oh boy. Yeah. I get to vote in the SAG Awards, and I'm like, they send you all the screeners, and I'm like, oh my God, everything's so heavy. Like, I just want to go watch Ted Lasso right now.
Yeah,
my brain.
I
Oh
I am
my God.
100% with you. Like maybe Palm Springs.
Yeah.
It's like, otherwise the whole stack of like,
Yes.
best, it's like, oh, this is about the drummer who's going deaf and
Yeah.
dealing with
Yeah.
heroin existence.
Yeah. Yes.
Heroin
It was
addiction.
all, and like you said, it was all like very, which is great. I'm
Or
glad that there's,
quote, dark satire. And it's
yes,
like,
which is still dark.
yes, yeah. What was the word that we were triggering on there? Oh, right, it was dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so of course, and so I was like,
I
oh,
do think
and
that's why Ted Lasso won the Golden Globes, by the way, is like people are like, oh, thank
we
you.
just want to fucking
Our
laugh.
teddy bear,
Yes.
our teddy bear, our feel good thing.
Oh man.
Elliot was
It's been
Elliot was
rough.
telling me that they were vaguely the only issue they had was that Sudeikis beat out Odenkirk for I guess best actor. And they were like, I mean, I want Odenkirk to win that before Better Call Saul is over. And it's like,
Yeah, that's true.
give it.
But I mean, Ted Lasso.
Exactly. Like, you know what?
I was really
of the moment.
Yeah, and I was really torn too because I voted, when I was voting, and like Rami got nominated this year, which was phenomenal. But I was just like, oh my gosh, but I love Ted Lasso so much because it made me so happy. And it's like not many things made me happy last year. There's a lot of things that made me every other negative emotion. And Rami was amazing, but it is the most uncomfortable show to watch. Like it's cringeworthy good, but it's painful. Like some of my friends just did not like it because it's just too painful. It's like just too painful, but it's so good.
There are genres of entertainment that that don't click for me because the whole cringe comedy, I'm not great with. It just I don't in my recreational time I do not find that does not I don't get anything out of it.
Right.
I don't walk away from it going that was an experience where the laugh made me feel good or and that's not to disparage it or to say
right, of course not. No, it's just not your cup of tea.
It's absolutely not my thing.
Yeah, it probably has a lot to do with the way you write as well, because a lot of your writing now, it's not Ted Lasso-y. It's a little more on the
it's
you can get dark, and so you can't live in that all the time.
And maybe that's why.
Yeah, you need the break
because a lot of the writing is deep dark, and I don't know if this makes me a hypocrite that I will write those stories, but I don't actually want to watch those stories.
Right.
Like I'm more than happy to exercise my own demons and force them on an audience. But I don't want to be in the audience of somebody else's exorcism, I guess. And
I don't think it's that. I think it's that you're so absorbed in it all the time. And this is like a very strange analogy, but I have a lot of restaurant owners, and a lot of them are Chinese restaurant owners. None of them eat Chinese food. They want a pizza or a sub because it's just all day, every day. That's what they see. And so, of course, that's not what they want. Yeah. It makes sense, actually, So, and so let's, because we tend to go on and on, you and I, it's been 2 months. Like, oh my gosh.
And it's the nice thing is that we have in the many hours we've recorded, while there have been pauses as I try to ponder a response, we have yet to hit that long awkward pause of
Never.
Well, I don't have anything to say.
I don't think it's ever gonna happen. Because we had like what was it, 30 plus episodes straight, and that's pretty intense. Yeah, it's pretty intense. So but but you describe, and you're not the first one. Like I've seen on social media other comic creators, like I'm in my bunker of writing, and I want like that visual. I want to know what that's like for you physically and mentally, and like, because I know you can't talk about what you're writing about, but
I can't.
I mean, it's this space, right?
I can't.
But everybody's dying to know.
I'm sorry, I can't. Hopefully hopefully in the not too distant future, I will be able to. There
Yes.
was a project that I needed to get underway in January. And so this was interesting. I'm trying to figure out how to approach this. Again, not an awkward pause, a thinking pause. Um, the One of the biggest problems that arises for me as a writer at this point in my career and my life is actually securing the time to do the work. And I should even specify that further by saying that, and by the work I mean a specific part of the work, which is the physical act of the writing of it. That there are other parts of the work that are not the actual sitting at a desk and typing, but are the wandering around the neighborhood, thinking or having the phone calls or blah, 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 blah. But when it comes to the writing, the need to be in an environment that, for me, and when I was younger, it wasn't as vital. When I was younger, I could sit in a noisy coffee shop and write a Batman script, and it would just come out like somebody had switched on a fire hose.
Wow.
Um, Elliot was in New York, so it was Dash and Jen and me, and Dashel is living, as horrible as the pandemic is, because of the way schooling is in Portland over the pandemic and so on, and how old she is living the perfect teenager lifestyle in a certain way, in that she can stay up until 4 and sleep until 2, and pretty much has been. So I get phone calls during the day, and they are consistently disruptive, and there's other stuff going around the house, and doorbell and delivery and shopping and dog and so on. So normally there are a couple ways that I'll deal with this. One way is by inverting my schedule. I'll do what Bendis lives, which is I won't start writing until 10 at night, and I'll write until 4 or 5 in the morning, and then I'll sleep until mid-afternoon, and rinse and repeat. But the problem is that when you do that in a shared living space, you are disrupting everybody else's schedule.
Okay.
So what ended up happening for this was my parents, several years ago, bought themselves a condo here in Portland, in a neighborhood in North Portland. That was the place that they would stay when they were up here, and they'd come up for weeks at a time and stay at the condo and be able to see their grandchildren and see their friends. And since my father passed, 5 coming on 6 years ago, and my mother was diagnosed with Parkinson's. The problem with this condo is that it is on the second floor of this building, and then it has 2 floors as well. So it is just nothing but stairs. And it's a small place, and it's a fairly quiet place, and we have used it to house friends and family over the years. Nicholas Scott and her husband, Craig Court, came and lived in Portland for about 4 or 5 months, and they were living there. So Jen and I had a conversation that was basically like, "Oh, why don't you go over there?" So for much of the last 6 weeks until about 2 weeks ago, I was spending 3 or 4 nights a week over there. I would go over on Sunday or Monday, and nobody's there.
Mm-hmm.
Very quiet building. Um, I would get myself some groceries. I bought a new coffee maker for the place,
Mm-hmm.
because had to have coffee.
Coffee.
And then I would work, and I'd be able to write anywhere from 8 to 14 hours a day,
Wow.
with some
Yeah, but
disruptions for
that's a lot
going
of,
out. Yeah.
yeah.
And that was very much bunkering,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was literally moving into a place where, and I told my management, I was like, I am off the grid,
Mm-hmm. Like
you know.
going under.
Yeah, when I'm talking to Angela, the
Yes.
nice thing about Angela, or one of the many nice things, is that I can say to her, look, I am doing this thing, so you have absolute carte blanche. Anybody who wants me, what needs to get through the membrane here,
Mm-hmm.
but you and David will hold it. And they held it for quite a while. There was no conversation.
Well, that's the benefit of having your team be so long with you. Like you
Yeah.
said, you trust them, they know you, and it's just, yeah.
Yeah.
So man, I find that fascinating because it's like I never could study or read or do anything in noisy places ever. Like I've never
Mhm.
I need like solitude all the time. So for me, anytime I'm trying to focus, it has to be that way. But does it change your creative I guess juices? Does it change your creativity to have that like kind of blank slate? Like I'm picturing, you used to tell me about your novels, and I pictured you in this like tower, because you're like, oh, it was just, me writing and it was dark, but like you literally move into this new space, and I'm sure it's like
Mhm.
a very nice place, but at home it's your home. You've got your
Mhm.
records and your TV and your
But
things.
but part of that
So,
is it's erasing all the distractions, right? I
right.
cannot. I am in this condo, and
Yes.
all there is there's the bed and the bathroom and the kitchen, and there is a TV, and it is not cable. It's got a little Apple TV box,
Mhm.
and it is, because God bless my parents, when they laid this out, the TV was an afterthought. So the space that it's in, it's actually really uncomfortable to watch the damn thing.
So you can't watch it for too long.
Exactly. You literally will give yourself a backache. Like the way they arranged the seating was so that you would all be looking at each other. It's not arranged to look at
Right.
a monitor.
Exactly.
So even if I wanted to waste 2-3 hours of watching a thing,
Yeah.
and so and that was the primary purpose was to erase the distractions.
Mhm.
So I would go over with my laptop setup. I'd bring my quirky writer, I'd bring my laptop, I'd bring
Mhm.
my laptop stand, I'd bring my external drives that I would need, I'd bring
Mhm.
my mouse. I finally got a second monitor set up there,
Mhm.
so that I could just plug into that system.
Yeah.
And then it would be like, all right, well, I'll open Tidal and I will listen to the exact same musical playlist over and over
Yeah.
again, because I just want ambient noise that's not going to get in the way. And now it's type. And the big disruption there was that my primary point of contact on this project, I was talking to them every day,
Mhm.
so that they would get an email at like 2 or 3 in the morning with like, this is what I did today.
Mhm.
And I would wake up to a text saying, when do you want to talk?
Mhm.
And then we'd get on the phone, and that would normally be, all right, we will now have a 90-minute conversation during which I will walk 5 miles. That will be, if I'm not running, right, then that was the exercise. It was the 5 mile walk or whatnot.
Yeah.
And then it's make yourself something to eat and get back to work.
Wow.
Um, but it works.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely, I am very aware that this is an incredibly privileged thing I am able to do,
Mhm.
because it is the only thing I do. I am a writer. So this is, I do not have to also do a day job and write. but the value of shielding up and locking the doors, and and Jen and I would talk 2 or 3 times a day to
Right,
check
of
in,
course. Yeah.
but I otherwise, I was in the dark.
Yeah, in the
So
fortress.
yeah, so
I find it fascinating because, I just like have this vision of like Greg, just typing away and, you're doing your thing. And now I know like that was like a big project and stuff, but you still have, I think it's also because you have so many projects that are still ongoing that are going on right
yeah,
now. And Lazarus, of course, being one of them.
yeah.
And so are
Issue will
there,
be June right now.
okay, June. So I was like, are there any updates for our listeners on any of
Yeah,
the things that they
it's
are
it's
looking forward to?
June. Michael is healthy, um,
Yay.
and safe,
Wonderful.
and back, and back at work. And I'm actually working on the next script after I finish the script I am writing right now,
Mm-hmm.
which is for another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, that right now we're all looking at June, and it looks like June's going to be for real. So
Yeah. Okay.
it
We
has
look forward to
been,
that.
yeah, it's been horrible. The schedule issues have just been
Yeah,
horrible.
I
But
mean the pandemic, and then of course he's in
yeah, I'm
Texas, and
not
they had
gonna.
the storms, and it's
Well,
just crazy.
they
Yeah,
had
it was.
Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Um.
Texas, so but okay, a couple more questions before we wrap up because I know you've
Yeah.
got to go. But a question I got a lot, of course, this week was about racism and is this a new thing? I'm like, no, obviously it's not a new thing. Like my culture's experienced it. Obviously, the African American culture's experienced it. Like there aren't changes. It's slow and incremental. It's maybe a step forward, three back, and it's been ongoing, right? And it's this, oh my gosh, I had no idea you Asians ever had those experiences. And I'm like, of course not. You don't ask. You don't, you don't live it, you don't know, right? But
Oh, and
huge thing.
also it is a different. It is a different kind of bigotry and prejudice,
Mhm.
in the same way that, it isn't. This is the thing, that it's a dangerous phrase. It isn't in the same way, for instance, that Jews deal with it, or
Mhm.
but there are things that are commonalities.
Mhm.
Um, Asian racism has been, quieter, and it gets masked oddly at times in this positivity. Oh, you're so good at math,
Mhm. Mhm.
kind of thing.
Yeah, that model
E-
minority myth, and yes,
Exactly.
yes.
That you guys are good.
Yes.
You're the good type of not white people,
Mhm. Mhm.
as opposed to those black people, right,
Mhm.
who are the
Mhm.
bad type,
Right, because
or
what's the
or
best way?
or
Separate all the,
exactly.
the minorities so that we do not
Yeah.
come together. Like they it's constant being trying to separate all of the
Yeah.
different backgrounds so that we don't join and we're not united. And I mean they purposely have done it. I mean, this is historically, but I've been asked about that. Like, have there been steps forward? And what are you asking about this? What do you want? And obviously we want things to change, but like this week we see the trial coming up for the Derek Chauvin, right? And
Uh-huh.
it's like people asked us last year, like, is there change? This is the most that we've seen so many people support Black Lives Matter, and this is the most support. Like, is this the one step forward thing? And I'm really curious as to how you think this is going to play out.
But the
Being that,
trial,
yeah,
I have no idea. My gut is pessimistic in these
hmm,
things.
yeah,
The burden of proof is, inevitably placed on the victim in these in these trials. It doesn't matter that Chauvin is known to be a piece of shit. It doesn't matter that there's video. Um, I don't. I I would love to see the trial do what a trial is supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see the facts uh, of the case presented for all to see. Um, if the institution is racist, expecting the institution to solve the problem is arguably a recipe for failure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
But this is it's the I believe it's the Audre Lorde quote, right? You cannot dismantle the master's house using the master's tools.
mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Um,
yeah, so I look at this kind of to that, is there going to be change? And it's like, depends on how this goes. It really would be a benchmark. It would be a huge win. It'd be more than
it
one
would
step
be,
forward. It would be a really big deal. So that's why I'm just kind of on edge, and people ask like, what do you think? And I say, like, oh, we're now at least not silent, for our cause, but like, seriously, like this is going to be a while. Like, this is not like, oh, next month, everything's going to be
no,
okay. Like,
and
this
that's
is a long haul,
well,
this is a
and
long.
and and that's the important part here, right? Like you can make the argument that the results of the trial, for better or for worse, is just another battle in the long war.
Mm-hmm.
And that the long war is a war we are all fighting together, trying to, not to sound Pollyanna, but to make a better world for ourselves and our posterity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so yeah, I don't know. I know that there are now on the federal level voices who spent the last 4 years being silenced or removed, right? And that there are people sincerely who want to affect the positive change, right? We have to, we're going to have to take whatever result comes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a real question as to the level of outrage, given what we know, the facts here. Mm-hmm. You look at but again, look what happened around Breonna Taylor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's I don't know.
Yeah, it's almost sad that we have to set ourselves up for disappointment so that we're not completely just crushed,
Yeah.
and that's the hard part, but yeah, we actually, I was looking back and literally we're like at the 2-week mark before our first conversation kicked off to the COVID thing with you
man,
and I.
We should
like
have waited.
No, it's all good. I just looked.
I
just looked and I was like, oh, okay. It was just so funny. And then like so many things unfolded in that year that we talked. So it was just, so I really wanted to kind of get a temperature check for where you were with that. And then, last couple things I promise is, one is thank you, because I've thrown myself into the world of activism, and even my mom, to be honest, like she's all about it. Like she is all about the social justice, but I've been super visible, and I've been visible on platforms in which I have a lot of people who aren't happy and giving me a lot of thumbs down. And honestly, she's a little bit worried about my safety. And I said to her, I understand, but I cannot be silent, because that is to be complicit. And I really do feel like from getting off of that safety task force and fighting against the gun crime for a lot of the Black and brown neighborhoods, for a lot of the people that are in poverty and like doing things. And then now I really have just been, I mean, I've been speaking at vigils all week and it has been nonstop and I am exhausted, but I actually feel good about it. I feel positive. And that's really because of you. Like you're Lazarus, and like everything you would write at the end, like all of that is super meaningful. And it's taken us here. Like it's taken us in all sorts of places, but it really has taken us here. So I'm very grateful to your inspiration and your role in the things that I'm doing right now.
That is very, very kind of you. I am very touched to hear it. I think it's important that you not for a second forget that you are doing it. You know, that you stepped up. And in the grand scheme of things, it is easier maybe for me to sit and write about it. It is harder to put yourself out in front of it. So that is wonderful to hear, Mimi, but what's more wonderful is what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, but I mean, you know, what you do has an effect is, kind of what I wanted to share. So, and on a bright note,
Yes.
Congrats again on the Nebula. Did you watch Mythic Quest on Apple as well as Ted? Okay.
I did not.
It's
I'm
up there
aware
with
of it.
it's up there with it's not as great as Ted Lasso, but like because
Few
of the
things
Nebula,
are.
few things are, but because of the Nebula, you need to watch it now because that's a huge part of it. And actually, if you go all the way to the end where there's a quarantine episode, Oscar and I were just shocked at how we felt at the end. And I think you would appreciate that. But because of the Nebula, I think you would really appreciate it. There's a really great component in there, and it's great. So, and congrats on that again. And very, very, very excited for you. So as always, it's amazing to talk to you. It's great to catch up. And
it was my best to your family, my best to Oscar.
Likewise.
And yeah, if not next week, the week after, okay?
Yeah, we be back.
We'll have an anniversary.
Yes. We'll have to get some drinks.
All right.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Culture Chat and hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please subscribe and rate my podcast. Feel free to leave me suggestions or send an email to mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or follow me on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.